Well, there are some more testy and tense exchanges today in the House of Commons, as at issue is an attempt by the Conservatives, but supported by all the other opposition parties, to compel the government, the Office of the Auditor General and others to turn over key documents to Parliament so they can then be sent to the RCMP.
While millions of Canadians are suffering from higher taxes, higher prices, and doubled housing costs, all caused by this government, the Speaker has ordered that the House of Commons can deal with no other business until this corruption motion is dealt with. So when will the government hand over the documents, and when will the government get Canadians their tax dollars back?
I think my honourable colleague's erratic and unhinged behaviour is because he knows that he is being completely false in what he is putting forward to this place. Mr. Speaker, what the Conservatives are putting forward is to trample the charter rights of Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The documents in question are related to the Auditor General's scathing review of the Sustainable Development Technology Fund, which the Conservatives have dubbed the Green Slush Fund. The audit found numerous conflicts of interest and that millions of dollars were handed to companies without following the proper rules. But the Auditor General is refusing to comply with the demand, saying it will compromise the work of her office. And the RCMP says what the House is trying to do could actually breach charter protections and won't help their investigation. So should MPs be doing this? The Power Panel is back on that. Cameron Ahmad, James Moore, Andrew Thompson, and Chacha Curl. So Andrew, I'd like to start with you. Look, the substance of the audit, look, this fund was a clear problem. It has been shut down. The Auditor General's looked into it. The police are looking into it. But Mike Duhem, the Commissioner of the RCMP, wrote a letter to Parliament saying, if you do this and give us these documents, we can't use them because it goes outside the normal investigative processes, and you might be violating the charter rights of the people involved. So it's not helpful. So what is Parliament doing by doing this?
Well, I think what Parliament's trying to do is to actually demand some accountability. Like, what's happening with this? This has been identified as a problem, a fairly major problem by the Auditor General. Maybe the police are investigating it, maybe they're not. There's no transparency, there's no urgency to deal with it. And I think there's a real concern it's all just being swept under the carpet. So in that way, as messy as what it is and as fraught as the process is, Parliament is at least putting some pressure to bear to say this can't go on. We can't have this level of casual corruption happening within the government. And unfortunately, the government doesn't seem to have provided a direction forward to how to deal with it. The RCMP have shown no real interest in it. And the Auditor General is standing on some kind of principled position, I guess, I'd put that in air quotes, saying she doesn't want to jeopardize her relationship with the government. Well, this is all very cozy, but none of it actually gets to the bottom of what happened and who should be held accountable for it. I don't know what the way is out of it. I mean, I suspect the most the most damaging but also sensible thing that came forward was the comment from the RCMP saying, look, we can't do anything with this. If you do give it to us and it compromises us, it would be helpful if they said they were actually taking a serious look at this and moving forward, but of course never commented on what they're investigating.
Okay, so on that, we did get comment a little while ago from Commissioner Mike Duhem, so I have an update for you. He was asked about this today after he finished testifying at the Foreign Interference Inquiry. Here's what the RCMP Commissioner had to say.
We did receive the documents, and the investigation is ongoing, so I'll limit my comments to that.
Is there an investigation?
There is that we confirmed, Mark and I have confirmed in front of the committee that there are investigations ongoing.
Okay, so the initial finding by the RCMP and by the Auditor General, James, was that they saw no evidence of criminality. And the Auditor General said, if the police want my documents, we know how to do that. We have a well-established process involving production orders. That seems to have been what happened. Things have been turned over. So what is Parliament doing if the two agencies involved in this are doing the right thing?
Well, I mean, by the way, what was just said there in the interview sort of blows apart the argument that, the RCMP didn't say this violates the charter rights, therefore we're turning it back. So what the Liberals have been saying in Parliament.
No. What they say violates the charter of rights is if the Auditor General gets documents with her powers that that are more powerful than a criminal investigation, and if Parliament compels it and sends it to the RCMP, that thwarts normal criminal protections. The letter was sent to the clerk, so they got it through a production order their own way.
I don't frankly know that that's true. There's a lot of could, might, should, may, could, will. there's a lot of debate about this. I don't frankly think that that's true.
Okay.
The Auditor General, I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I had the privilege of serving on her and her predecessor's group of advisors who looked at the AG reports before they became public. She's a very studious, smart, and thoughtful person about the public interest. So I respect what she has to say. What she said publicly about this so far, though, is not frankly terribly strong on this. When you're dealing with an agency that's this large and the amount of spend, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that's being spent here, and the scale, which is like $1 in $5, up to $1 in $5, is being alleged to have been appropriated in ways that may or may not be criminal, but are clearly, to a lot of people, look like it smells like a clear conflict of interest. And when you have not just the official opposition Conservatives, but also the Green Party and also the Bloc Québécois and also the NDP, a clear majority of the House expressing their view. In a democracy, the majority has rights, and Parliament has a right to see these documents and to have them be shared with those who might hold them accountable. Because the issue is not just a bland black and white issue of criminality. The issue of conflict of interest is many shades of gray, and that needs to be exposed so the public can render judgment on that.
But Shachi, the way this would work is that Parliament would just be sort of like, they'd be Amazon. It would just come to them and go straight to the RCMP. There's no tabling of these documents in Parliament. There's no public disclosure of it. Nobody sees anything. It goes to the Mounties, and the Mounties have said, it is therefore highly unlikely that any information obtained under the motion could be used to support a criminal prosecution or further a criminal investigation. So you have these concerns being voiced by the National Police Force and an officer of Parliament. Yes, Parliament is supreme, but just because they can do it doesn't mean they should do it, is essentially the pushback from the people who investigate these things and led to the ArriveCan investigation. How do you think Parliament should respond to that?
So, James just talked about sort of the public opinion and the public adjudication of all of this. And David, I'm now going to tell you something that might make you cry. It will be a nice pick through your heart, but only about 11% of Canadians follow what's happening in Parliament and in question period on any given day particularly closely. 4 times as many say that they don't follow the machinations at all. So we've heard some really expert, principled laying out of the issues from Andrew, from James, from you. Here's what it gets boiled down to. If people are checked into the details of this in any way, it's a very small percentage, most of whom are probably watching this show, and good on us. For the rest of us, it will get boiled down to a mention, a news item, a headline, a tweet or a social media piece that's proffered by one of the opposition parties, probably the Conservatives. And what the takeaway will be about the essence of what happened, less about the procedural stuff, less about the principled issues that we've talked about here, and more about government bad, wasteful with money, didn't do its checks and balances, shame, 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 bad. And that will be the takeaway. So the win-lose for the Conservatives or for the opposition in a practical political sense to keep this going, it's more win than lose, because people are only going to get snippets of this and really only understand and be dialed into it at its highest, easiest essence. Now, beyond that, you've got a situation where people are going to be saying, well, look, okay, I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to delineate and really understand what the issues are here. Right. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not minimizing the issue at hand, but it is something that most people are not going to be particularly alive to.
No, and look, and I get that, and that is all fine. But Cameron, I think when credible people like the head of the RCMP and the Auditor General are suggesting that Parliament is overstepping its authority and maybe running up against the charter rights of individuals, and maybe next time it's not a slush fund, as it's being called, with all kinds of problems in it. It could be anything. And you're getting into politicians directing things to the police and using the power of Parliament to do it. It's an interesting question of whether they should. So that's what I wanted to explore. So Cameron, what are your thoughts on that? I don't think it's a vote mover at all. I just wonder if this is what they should be doing when you look at the concerns that have been raised.
Yeah, well, I think 2 things. So firstly, I do agree with James that in a democracy, especially when there's an issue that is seemingly so outrageous and problematic as the issue at hand here of this agency and how that money was spent, there's absolutely an obligation for everything to be exposed and for parliamentarians to get answers and for Canadians to have those answers through their parliamentarians, through the agencies that are, that are there to look into them and to provide those answers. At the same time, we have to respect the independence of these institutions, and that's also fundamental in a democracy, is understanding the delineation of responsibilities. Both of those agencies, the RCMP and the AG's office, have made it quite clear what their concerns are. I think ultimately, though, where this ends up is where Shachi says most Canadians are not going to be following the minutia of this. They're going to hear something about the scandal, and it is up to the government to show that they're taking it seriously, that they are outraged if any money was misspent, and show proactively what they're doing to address it. And if they aren't, then this is what happens. And I think as another side effect to this, it's making Parliament unworkable because there's clearly a standoff right now. So I'm not sure what the path forward is because both sides are extremely entrenched in their positions, right, and they feel they've been expressing those positions really passionately.
Yeah, look, this fund was a mess, and they shut it down. And if there's criminality, investigate them, charge them. I mean, all of those things. But, James, I've seen you shaking your head as I've been positing the questions. I know you disagree with me on this, but, I just wonder if I don't really know if Parliament should be doing this, but it's doing it, and some serious people are concerned they're doing it.
No, I just, the air cover that the Liberals are getting here and trying to avoid accountability for a few $100 million, about 1 in 5 of which is alleged to have gone in conflict of interest to friends of the people who are managing the fund. If Stephen Harper were disregarding the voices of 4 out of 5 parties in the Parliament of Canada and disregarding, the alleged abuse, maybe not criminality, but conflicts of interest are more than enough to bring down governments. We're disregarding that and saying, well, we think there might possibly be a charter issue here. We have to kind of, therefore, punt it, and we're just going to kind of ignore the will of the majority of Parliament. I'm pretty sure that people would be pretty outraged by that, and we wouldn't have people, defending it or saying, well, there's a process here. No, there's a process here. Taxpayers' money goes to Ottawa. The money needs to be spent in a transparent and accountable way. And if it's not, blow the whistle. And 4 of the 5 parties in Parliament are blowing the whistle, and they're saying, make the documents available.
Okay, but Andrew, your thoughts? I mean, is the Auditor General not the process? The RCMP not the process? PROC, where this is going to probably end up? The Operations Committee of Parliament the process? I mean, this is being investigated and it's being revealed. There's no public transparency in what Parliament is doing, right? That has to come through the other avenues to get those answers.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a game of hot potato here. Everyone's just passing it around. Nobody really seems to be wanting to deal with it. The problem is also that this isn't the first of these that's popped up. As you've referenced already, we've got the ArriveCAN issue. There have been other procurement issues on the Indigenous side. I mean, there's a lot of questions just about who exactly is providing oversight of what the bureaucrats are up to. Now, I don't know that any of this meets the threshold of this isn't. I'm trying to think of what the last great scandals we had were.
AdScan. I mean, the sponsorship scandal in Quebec was enormous. So the Auditor General uncovered that, right?
Yeah, I mean, but nobody's suggesting that there's bags of money being handed over to politicians in this particular case. But there's obviously something happening at a bureaucratic level that is simply, not acceptable and needs to be investigated. I mean, one of the things I do think all the parties should come forward with if they want to start to proactively move it. If you can't do it through a committee, and the RCMP doesn't seem particularly, fixated on this. The Attorney General doesn't seem particularly fixated on it, on this question of corruption. Why not establish an anti-corruption commission? Other countries have this. Australia has one that works, that is able to do these investigations, knows what it's looking for, what the thresholds are, and is able to move that forward if necessary. We just need more transparency on this. It's not, I don't think anybody doubts that there's some level of corruption in this. Who's done it, whether it's for political gain or not, you could debate. But this kind of abuse has to be put an end to. And that's the piece that I think, if the parties could agree on what the process is, we'd be better off.
Shachi, last word to you. I was struck by the RCMP commissioner saying this is not going to solve anything, which is interesting to me, that the police are saying this is not helpful, so don't do it.
It does rather seem counter to what we expect from police in general, which is investigation and, see if you can find out what's going on, root out what's going on, catch the bad guys who are doing whatever they're doing, if there is indeed bad guy behavior happening. But I think that quite aside from what the RCMP is saying about this, quite aside from what the Auditor General is saying, this taking it back to Parliament, you know, these three parties have to decide, are they serious about being serious about the issue and really looking into it and using the powers of Parliament in an appropriate and responsible manner, or is this about scoring more political points and putting the Liberal government on defensive and just costing them one more day of being able to talk about their agenda and instead being back on their heels trying to react to and respond to somebody else's and another party's?
Yeah, well, ultimately, when Parliament decides on what they're debating now, it'll end up back at committee, and maybe we'll get some more answers there. I don't know. But maybe that's a conversation for another Thursday. We're out of time. I want to thank you all. Cameron, James, Andrew, and Shachi. Good to see you all.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.